July the 1st, 3 days before the 4th, and it's 7:06 p.m. documentation, retention, diary, all of that. But this going to be kind of short because it's only it's talking about 2 chapters that I read, that I actually sat down and read today. And it's basically about Muhammad's conquest, more so going north, even though the first chapter I'm going to talk about is only one paragraph, basically a testimony, a little short section about 2 places in Yemen. And then the second chapter is talking about I think 6 other places, but going toward north. So I'm going to start off by mentioning the short portion. Basically, after he had, so this is in 630, by the way. This is also in 630 after he conquered Taif, which is the southeastern district of Mecca. That's when he defeated the Banu Conquest, the fucking Banu Hawazin peoples, converted them, etc. The chief of the Banu Hawazin tribe was a guy named Malik ibn Auf al-Nasri. So going straight to the chapter. Basically, it was 2 places in Yemen, right? One was in eastern Yemen. It was called Tabalah. And then the other one was in western Yemen, but it was in Sadak, Yemen. Yemen, actually. And it was called Al-Jurash, or Jurash. So I'm going to say Al-Jurash, Al-Jurash. And basically, when he went there, he didn't have to fight or anything like that because the people just basically gave in or yielded to his demands, and he had converted people of both lands into Islam. The thing that I find kind of curious about it is they mention a diner, people in Jurash or Al-Jurash, for instance. They had to pay a diner for every adult. Now I'm thinking okay, based on what I've read so far, I'm thinking the whole of Arabia, there wasn't no coins, that could be translated as money. So I'm what the fuck does a diner come in at? And every time I look up the term diner, that's what it is. It's like a coin. It's a form of currency. The only people that during this time that had that type of currency was basically the Eastern Romans. So I did a quick checkup today just to check because I like to have clarity about this shit. You know what I'm saying? It fits my curiosity in what I'm trying to learn about overall. But because I'm reading this portion and then the term diner comes up, I'm thinking I think it was the Caliphate of Uthman. It could have been Umar, but I believe it was Uthman. That's when they instituted coin currency. Again, as far as my knowledge about it. So, I looked it up, and I'm okay, what about the Ghassanids? The people that was in Syria, who basically had a good influence over Western Asia, but particularly the Levant, which was back in the day also considered Syria. That's what I read in this book. I thought that was fucking interesting because I had never heard that before as well. So I'm looking it up, and I'm okay, the Ghassanids, let's see what kind of currency they had. First, I looked up, did Arabia, any tribe, any city, town, etc. in Arabia ever have fucking currency during the 7th century? At least around this period, 630 AD. Nothing came up on the internet. And then as far as the Ghassanids people, they didn't have currency during this time either. Supposedly they were forbid for minting coins or just, coming up with their own solid currency. So I'm what the fuck? So I was okay, maybe a diner is just a piece of gold, a piece of jewelry, maybe silver at the least. But again, because of what I read later on when I'm about to go into the second chapter of this, but I'm going to stick with the people of Tabalah and Al-Jurash first. I'm okay, if you had to pay a diner for every adult male, in which he referred to as the people of the book based on their roots in the Bible, I guess, and then also people from Yemen were considered pure or as pure as you could get based on their history, everybody else later on that kind of went northward, but in particular the Al-As people, because every time I read, when I read about different tribes in Arabia and also in Western Asia, all of them, damn near all of them, including some ones in Iraq, in Al-Kufa of Iraq, Al-Haraya, or what is it, Hira, actually, Al-Hira in Iraq, which is south of Al-Kufa. All of these fucking tribes, they all trace their roots back to Yemen. It's always the Al-As people, for the most part, that came from Yemen and then, immigrated north. But you got some during the BCs as well, but it's like the Al-As people Al-As people are always the primary form of reference in terms of ancestry from all of these tribes. And so, like, the word that denotes them as far as their originality or being pure Arabs is the Quatanites. There's another word called the Adnanites, because they're basically people that's either mixed with or have ancestry from those that came from Yemen, which is the Quatanites, but also from the people within either one of these territories going north that they mixed with, basically, and further Arabized, as they call it. So they call them Adonites. So Adonites are Arabs as well, but they're not the pure Quatanite Arabs that come from fucking Yemen. So when he refers to these people as people of the book, it kind of makes sense to me. But he said, like, every single adult or a diner had to be paid for that was tailored to the number of adults within these lands. And again, it just don't make sense to me, because I'm like, I thought they didn't have currency. But, like I say, this book, as far as the original documents, all that shit came out 1,200 years ago. Still a portion of it missing, but for the most part, this ain't nothing but, like, translations. So I'm going to take their word over anything else that came out later. In fact, as a side note, I noticed, and I'm only throwing extra shit up in here because these 2 chapters are really short. I noticed, I'm like, okay, when I go look at these botanical articles, and, like, they'll give additional information sometimes, which is helpful. But a lot of the times I go look at the reference they got at the bottom, and then these are coming from books that came out, like, fairly recent. You could say, like, during the 20th century. Not the 21st, the 20th century, for the most part. And I'm like, shit, I wonder if I go check those documents and see where they got their sources from, as far as the literature that they're extracting information from before they process it for themselves and put it out there. I wonder, like, how old does those sources go? Because the great majority of what they put out on Google is not a part of this book. And this book is pretty extensive, by the way. So I'm like, shit, maybe that's something that they include later, but hey, we'll see. I thought that was interesting. But again, that plays to this whole thing, a diner. Like I say, when I go online, I don't find anything, as far as, like, them talking about these people in Arabia, but, Yemen, for example, having diners. Also in northern Arabia and Syria, but, the Levant, but like I say, back in the day, they call it Syria. I get to that in a second, because some of those people had to pay diners too. But I don't know. That's a thought that I'm going to keep to myself. Again, it's unfortunate that you can't, or me, myself, like, when I look it up, I can't find additional information about this shit. You know what I'm saying? Again, the botanical articles, not the shit on nobody, they always reference, like, the first currency in terms of, like, coins came later. Again, either the Uthman or the Uman Caliphate. So anyway, yeah, so they had to pay that for, that was tailored to whatever amount of adult males that lived in their land. And then also, what was it? Oh, yeah, they also converted to Islam. This is all off the top. The people in Tabalah, as well as Al-Jurash, they both converted to Islam. They didn't put up a fight. And then as far as, like, the latter that I just named, Abu Sufyan was placed as the governor of those people in western Yemen, within the land of Sada. So the only thing is, okay, I'm not sure if that's Abu Sufyan, who did convert to Islam before this, but, was the chief of the Banu Quraysh tribe. I'm not sure if, that was that guy or somebody else with that name, because the full name of the guy that they placed as governor, his name is Abu Sufyan ibn Hard. so I didn't get the chance to double check because the internet cut off today, and I wanted to make sure before I do my practice blog on this for retention purposes and all that, documentation, all of that, I wanted to make sure that I included all of that in my note section. I got everything except that part, which is not really a big deal. And then another part, it was a place called Ailah. And I was about to write down, like, as far as the stipulation, Muhammad placed toward those people as well. But like I say, the internet cut off. But, you know, I'm not worried about nobody trying to steal that, because that's just, if they extract that portion, which is really minute, it's basically an isolated fact. It don't really mean nothing without the context around it. So anyway, that's what I didn't get the chance to put down. But for the most part, I got everything documented, the essentials at least. So anyway, that's what happened to those two towns in Yemen. So the second chapter goes on to talk about when he went north. Now, as far as this peninsula, Arabia, like, I know the geography of it, as well as the region within proximity of it, basically the Near East. But, you know, when you go a little bit more in depth about this, like today, northwestern Arabia, a great portion of it, if it's not the entire northern region of it, but the northwestern portion of it is basically, it's a province. It's called Tabuk. Not Tabuk, but Tabuk. Tabuk. And then there's a city within this province, which is the capital of this province today. Now, I'm thinking like this city within this fucking region was like an ancient town that existed at least during the medieval period. Now, as far as the second chapter, this is the first town that Muhammad went to. And before I explain why, I'm gonna go ahead and name all of the fucking towns that are relevant to this chapter. Tabuk, which is the one I just named, and then you got another one called Adhruh, which is in, I want to say, southern Jordan when I look at the map. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't say central, and it's definitely not northern Jordan, but it's like at the southern part of it. But not like at the coast of it, like the southern coast of it, because the southwestern coastal region of Jordan is called the Aqaba region. All right, that's similar to another spot within Medina itself, where the Constitution of Medina was instituted, or like fashioned or put together at. But this is a separate region. This is in southwestern Jordan. Now, the place Adhruh that I mentioned is north of that. So Adhruh, then you got another one called Al-Jarba, which is also supposedly is like a mile from Adhruh. They didn't say if it was a mile north or south of it. Again, this is like stuff that I included in my jargon, but it's right there within proximity of it. So you got Adhruh, you got Al-Jarba, and then let me see, to the northwest of that, you got Petra. And also to the southeast of Adhruh and Al-Jarba is another place called Makna, which didn't get included in this second part of this chapter. Not the second chapter literally, but like the second part or the second chapter that I read today. But it's basically like southeast of it. You know what I'm saying? So think of it like Petra, Adhruh, Al-Jarba, and then Ma'an. But all of these towns is north of Aqaba in southwestern Jordan. You know what I'm saying? That's how it goes. So Tabuk, Adhruh, Al-Jarba, and Makna, which kind of makes me think about Makna or Maknasa, but that's in Morocco. That's during the 14th century. But even though that town in itself goes back pretty far too, to like the 7th century. But this place called Makna is also within the northern region of Arabia, the what's called today the Tabuk province. That's what that's at. So that's a part of this chapter, and then another place called Ailah. Now Ailah is within Jordan also, but the Aqaba region, so that's southwestern Jordan. That's where Ailah is at. And then another one was I think that's about it. I think I got them all. Am I forgetting anything? If I am, I'll come back to it. But those are basically the main places. Now, when he went north, right, and he went to this place called Tabuk, supposedly, this is what they wrote down, or it was written in this book. He went there because he heard, like, people was trying to, like, assemble a coalition from all of these various tribes within that region as well, not just, like, within what they call Syria and Jordan or the Levant, but just all throughout the entire region of Western Asia. And most of those tribes basically consisted of Christians for the most part. But when he got to Tabuk, the town there, he found out that there was no threat toward him from these people. But the interesting thing is, like, okay, he basically got the opportunity to talk to various chiefs and heads of these different tribes. Now, I'm going to go ahead and name some of the tribes and pause right there. One was called the Banu Amila, and that tribe, they basically live. They also come from Yemen, by the way. Their ancestors, every last tribe that I'm about to mention also originally come from fucking Yemen, but by this point they're considered the Adnanites. But the Banu Amila tribe, they lived in the region of Lebanon, and the Banu Judham tribe, which also lived in, when they mentioned that, overall, you had people that resided in Egypt, Syria, and also northern Arabia. They didn't say specifically where these people lived at during this time, but they did say that they were like companions to the Ghassanids, which resided in the north, and the Ghassanids also had control of various portions of the Levant as well, so it makes sense. So that was one tribe that they mentioned, and then they mentioned the Banu Lakmids, which I think is interesting, and I want to say something about this part too. I don't understand how they would assemble a coalition against Muhammad, especially like they were key figures in the region, because the Lakmids, for the most part, was always on good terms with the Sassanids. You know what I'm saying? And so-called, like, they also prevented or had a say-so of different Arabian tribes entering the land of the Persians. So being that Persian is basically Iran, they was kind of like in control of traffic as far as people going northeast into Iran. But you also had the Ghassanids also who had a say-so in the region too. And a lot of times these people would go, fight against each other. But, the Ghassanids, for instance, like, okay, the Lakmids was basically not necessarily just a proxy, but, they were like a companion group of people to the Sassanid Empire that existed from the 4th to the 7th century. The Ghassanids, who had been there since the 3rd century, 222 AD to be exact, because the town that they had inhabited or lived at was called Jabayah. But they were, for the most part, on good terms with the Eastern Romans at the time. And today, what is known as Istanbul, but back then was considered I hate saying this word, I always fuck it up, Constantinople or some shit. So that's basically like at the northwestern portion of Turkey. It's basically almost connects the northeastern portion of Europe to Western Asia. But the only thing that separates it, and I'm not talking about just the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, is a little strip of water called the Bosporus River or something like that. It's really small. It's only like 7 miles wide, I think. It's really fucking small. Anyway, that's where the Romans lived at. That's what they were centered at. And at that time, they was called the Eastern Romans. So when he mentioned, like, when they were in this book, when they mentioned how the Lakmids was one of these tribes that was so-called conspiring against Muhammad, that, I don't know. Again, that just makes me think about that quote from that movie Braveheart. History is written by those who hung heroes. In other words, it could be exaggerated. I personally believe, just before I go further in talking about what they denoted in this book, I personally believe that Muhammad was basically on a conquest for land, much more prior to this, especially after they finally officiated everything at 622 in Medina. From that point onward, I think for the most part, I'm going to exclude what happened with the Banu and Nader tribe, but I'm going to say like after, let me see, definitely, I'm going to say this, definitely after 622, starting in 622 at least. After they conquered Kabar, I'm going to say for the most part, every other place that they had went to after that, and I ain't going to get into all that right now because I ain't think this was going to be 20 minutes so far, but every other place that they had been to, Valley, Oasis, etc., was all a part of a conquest. I don't fully agree with every single reason given for that. So like when he says, he went to Tabuk because of what was being assembled against him, I'm not sure if that's completely true. I don't think like the Lakhmid people would be concerned with what was going on in Arabia. You know what I'm saying? They haven't even really went and conquered anywhere in Syria at this point. You know what I'm saying? So like the stuff that I'm about to mention is, I don't know, I feel like it's a lot that's left out of the story, but I'm just going to mention the facts as they put it and then just give my perspective on it. So anyway, he went there. And he got to talk to all these chiefs, obviously. He didn't say that, but, based on these terms that he left with these people, he had to have spoken to their heads. But the only chief that they denoted was a guy from Aqaba in Jordan. Remember that little area that I call Ailah? His name was Yuhana ibn Ruba, all right? Now, I'm going to order and talk about these terms that he had with these people. Remember, every place that I mentioned, as far as the second part, second chapter, every last one of those places he had developed terms with, and remember, they were all Christians for the most part. Now, as far as the people of Ailah, I'm going to mention them first. I'm going to go in reverse. This is the town that I didn't get the chance to write the stipulation down in my note section. So like I say, that's why I'm not worried about nobody trying to take it, because it'd just be it'd just be an isolated fucking fact. But anyway, the stipulation that he had for those people, they basically had to pay like 300, I think it was 300, yeah, basically 300 diners. That was the only stipulation for those people as far as what's mentioned with him and the land that he was at. They didn't say anything beyond that as far as those people, Ailah, is concerned. So I'm like, shit, they probably wasn't really that big, because like when I considered the stipulation that he had for the people in Yemen, Tabalah and Al-Jurash, if you had to pay basically a dinar for every adult, that's almost like a consensus as to how big that population was. And being that a clan consists of anywhere between 100 and 300 people, in a tribe at least 1,000 to 3,000 people, if the people in Ailah only had to pay 300, that means they wasn't really that big of a population in the first place. So I can understand how Muhammad would give them, in particular, a get down or lay down message, and then give them that little slight stipulation of paying 300, and then you good. You know what I'm saying? You subjugated under us, but you're good. We're not going to completely destroy you guys or raid your lands. I can understand that. That's for those people. And then for the people of Adhruh and, yeah, let's say Adhruh. I was going to say Al-Jarba, but I get to them in a second. Because the people of Al-Jarba had the same stipulation as those in the province of Tabuk. I'm talking about the Makna people. Get to them in a second. But as far as the Adhruh people, every year, at least once a year, all right, and this is all he said as far as them, they have to pay 100 dinars. So it was a month. I can't remember exactly what month it is. I know what it means, but like as far as on the calendar, I can't remember exactly what month it's supposed to be, but it's called Rajab. And during this month, it's like a peaceful time. No wars are supposed to take place. Any type of fighting or quarreling is prohibited. But once a year during that month, all right, the people of Adhruh will have to pay at least 100 dinars over. That's the only stipulation that they were under. They didn't say anything as far as them, having to pay like a sadaka as far as their products and goods and what percentage they'll have to give over. They didn't say anything about those people. You know what I mean? Just like those in Ailah. So they had like a light stipulation. So again, I'm thinking like those people with the light stipulations probably didn't have that much in the first place. And they probably wasn't that prominent as far as numbers is concerned. Barely a tribe, in other words. Now, we get to Al-Jarba and Makna. Now, this part of the book can be fucking confusing. When he was talking about Al-Jarba and Makna, and remember, Al-Jarba is basically north of the Aqaba region, but it's all still in Jordan. You know what I'm saying? But it's southeast of Petra, but it's right next to fucking Adhruh, but at the same time northwest of Ma'an. But when he mentioned Al-Jarba, I think he said they had to pay what was it? Oh damn, I can't. So I almost slipped my mom. Anyway, when he get to that part, when he get to them, he says like a quick look where they provide like a little quick short sentence for those people, but then they kind of like transition, and then they say there was a letter that Muhammad had wrote to these people, and the way that they wrote it or the way that it's written down is like, okay, he'll be talking to the people of Al-Jarba, but at the same time he mentions Maknas. So I had to read this quite a few times, at least 3 or 4 times, and then skim over it to make sure I'm not missing anything. So in other words, he basically provided them the same stipulation. They both had to pay diners, but at the same time, they both actually did have to pay a sadaqah. You know what I mean? Which in my mind means that the people at Al-Jarba and Makna probably had a little bit more than the other people as far as Ailah and Adhruh is concerned. So the stipulation was like this. They had to pay a sadaqah, but it was 1/4 of whatever they accumulated. Now he said as far as the language, he said nets. 1/4 of what you have in your nets. So to me, that's like the same thing as a fucking load. You know what I'm saying? They just said a net, for instance. So 1/4 of that, so they have to pay 25%. And again, language is kind of vague, but I'm thinking they're hinting at the fact that whatever crop that these people have in their land, they have, like, say for instance, they got like peas or something. You know, they have to pay 25% of every fucking load of peas that they accumulate, or every net of it. If they got like what they call lentils, they have to pay 25% of that. You know what I'm saying? Grain, all of that, the same thing. They have to pay 25% of any type of crop. But did also say, as far as what the women, what did he say? As far as what the women, what was it? Not sown, but damn, what was the word? It was 20. They had to pay 1/4 of the crops, and what the women, I don't know, I forget. It ain't even. It's a small detail anyway. Basically, 25% of their value or their goods they have to pay over, but then they had to pay some type of diner as well. But the thing is, he assured these people, based on the letter, that they will be under Muhammad's protection. They will be under Islamic protection. Also, as far as their clothes, I think he said camels, and their arms belong to the Prophet. Now, they didn't say whether or not he stripped that from the people, but they did say, or Muhammad did say in his letter that they provided, that those possessions belong to him. Ultimately, everything else that they got, they basically can keep. Everything else is pretty much exempt. And then at the end of the letter, and again, I'm thinking he's talking to both people, by the way. At the end of the letter, the language, again, gets kind of unclear, because it was like, okay, no ruler of Ye or some shit like that no ruler of ye have of the have of no ruler of ye shall have of something something than the family of Muhammad. So I'm like, okay, that's a two-way thing. Either you're saying, because like again, when I read about these people as far as the botanical articles is concerned, all of these tribes, for the most part, or great majority of them, remain Christian. Now, as far as Al-Jarba is concerned, one of the tribes that lived there was one called the Banu Habayba tribe. Now, they supposedly remain Christian for the most point. But as far as the language, the very last sentence at the end of this fucking letter, I'm like, I'm not sure if he's trying to say, like, you can't have any other rulers other than me or people that are Islamic, or if he's assuring them that they can govern themselves, but they'll still have to be over or under Islamic rule. But again, based on these botanical articles, most of these tribes maintain their religion, so that part is a little iffy to me. But anyway, that's basically the stipulation that he provided for those people of Al-Jarba and Makna. That's basically it. And I already mentioned like the last part of it, which is the people of Ailah under Yuhana ibn Rubar, as far as them having to pay 300 in dinar over to Muhammad. So that's basically everything. That's it. That's it. As far as the regions of it, I think I got all of that covered. So let me make sure I got everybody. I mentioned the Tabuk region, or the town actually within the province of Tabuk today. I mentioned Al-Jarba. I mentioned Adhruh, Makna, Ailah. I mentioned the Banu Judham, the fucking Banu Amilah. Oh, yeah. Let me say something else real quick. As far as the Banu Judham, if I didn't say this already, and again, it's all documentation purposes, not for nobody else's ears. You know what I'm saying? In case any type of entity is listening, trying to make it seem like I'm crazy, I talk like this as if I'm talking to a person. It's a conversation I'm having. It's the way that I communicate my thoughts and make sure everything is retained. But as far as the Banu Judham, it did say that they were also contained to the Ghassanids, to the Banu Amilah tribe as well as the Ghassanids. So I think that's it. Make sure I didn't forget anything else. But like I say, as far as the facts, like if I wanted to just give the facts straightforward, I could just talk about these places that they've been to based on the literature itself. But I do think it's a lot more to the story. I highly doubt that the Lachmids felt some type of way about Muhammad prior to 630. And so all these people was trying to simulate a coalition to destroy him or take him off the fucking map. That's what I think so far. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't make too much sense to me. I think, this whole, what's called Dar al-Islam is called that for a fucking reason, the conquest of Islam through land grabs. I think that's what he had. It's just like the book of Joshua. I'm just going to go to that. That's what it makes me think about. And I was going to write this in my note section. I was like, nah, I keep that thought to myself until I record this. And so I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. It's like, I remember when I read the book of Joshua, right, and they was talking about, like, when they finally crossed over the Jordan River and they was conquering all these different tribes and fucking lands. There were once Joshua, basically, to put it in layman words, once he basically got his foot in the door and when he was pretty much planted, he started thinking about and worrying about all of these other fucking tribes in the land that was going to hear about him and then want to team up with each other to attack him. So that was like one of his worries or concerns that further added to him conquering all of these different people. So I'm not going to take that same logic and apply that to Muhammad and then justify what they wrote as far as in his book about these people trying to assemble this whole coalition because, they know about Islam coming up in the land. I highly doubt that was the case, just like I highly doubt that was the case in the book of Joshua. And like I always say, and I got this in my notes section too, so I'm going to go ahead and say it since it's been 34 minutes. This is one of the things I think about as far as that part of biblical history. I find it fucking interesting, all right? I'm not no goddamn Satanist. I am not an atheist. My perspective overall as far as I understand it, even though probably only like barely 20% of it has been put out there as far as what I wrote down and shit. It don't fit none of those perspectives. So I would not want to be classified into that category, even though you might find a slight similarity here. But I find it fucking interesting, okay? Moses and those people felt like they was going through tyranny, right? So in Egypt. So he wanted to take his people and go back to fucking Western Asia, right? It took a while for them to do that. It took the generation of fucking Joshua to do that, the next generation. When they finally got back to the land of butter, that's when they started conquering all of these different tribes and killing their ass and slaughtering them. So when I'm thinking about population numbers, I'm like, damn, okay. They escaped from Egypt because they felt like they were going through tyranny. But shit, in the long run, they slaughtered more people or a number of people within Western Asia itself. And I guarantee you that number of people that was killed during this whole conquest of Joshua far outweigh the number of the Hebrew Israelites that were in Egypt that died under tyranny. I guarantee you, I always keep that thought to myself. I always say, like, whenever I get on that subject, I don't know when. That's some shit in the back of my mind. I go with what I feel at the moment when I get done reading certain things. But when I get on that subject, I can't wait to find out. I'm going to find that shit out. I'm going to know what is the purported number of people that suffered in Egypt as opposed to Western Asia. I don't know. But anyway, still, that logic itself as far as like when he got into the land and then he felt threatened or he felt like there was going to be some type of imminent threat when people heard about him. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't take that same logic and apply that to Muhammad. I think Muhammad was more so like on a conquest in itself. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say too much about that. But again, I don't want to be put in no category of nobody because my thoughts are completely fucking unique overall. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say so far about these two chapters. The next one is about a place called Dumat Al-Jandal. That's how it's spelled. So it's DUMAT-AL-JANDAL. That's the next fucking chapter that I'm going to read tomorrow. So I don't think I got anything wrong as far as what I put out there as far as what I had read today. It took me like an hour and 30 minutes to analyze everything, and I wish I would have had more time. I was kind of rushing because I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, damn, it's 5 o'clock, and I really wanted to upload a lot of new stuff on my phone for inspirational purposes and also entertainment as well. So I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, damn, 5:03, damn, 5:10, 5:15. Oh, man, I got to kind of speed through this. But, I think I did pretty well. I didn't forget anything. I think my interpretation is on point. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I'm wrong. I remember all the tribes, all that. But still, I wish I had an additional 30 to 40 minutes to finish my shit. But I got through the chapter. It is what it is. I go on to the next one tomorrow. All right. July 1st, 7:44 p.m. It's your boy JL.